and we'll get started. So right off the bat, welcome to Mentor Mondays. Today's topic is not mentor-client relations, but we'll figure that out. Today's topic is subscription-based revenue models. So before we get started, I'd just like to start with a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land in which we gather has been and still is the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, numerous Indigenous nations and Indigenous people have lived and passed through this territory. We want to recognize that this territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Two Row Wampum Treaty, which emphasizes the importance of joint stewardship, peace, and respectful relationships. Sheridan affirms it's our collective responsibility to honor and respect those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who have yet to come. And we're quite grateful for the opportunity to be working and living on this land. So, quick orientation for anybody who's maybe not had the chance to work with Zoom before. Quick meet the team. We're going to do some session chats and direct messaging and sharing audio and video. So my name is Cole Arnett. I'm the client experience intern at Edge. Happy to serve you today and happy to help with the back end for this call. We encourage each and every one of you to show off your cameras during the session. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring a little bit more human connection to these lovely times during COVID. We do ask that if you are not speaking or if you have not been called upon to speak during the session, you just keep your mic muted just so we can avoid any background noise during the session. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the raise hand emoji or to type in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on the chat to make sure all questions are answered during the session. Our agenda for today, we're going to do a couple introductions and then rounds, and then some goal setting for today. For any of you who have not been part of Edge before, who have not connected with us, we are a social enterprise-based incubator running out of Sheridan College. We have several programs that we offer to many individuals, both outside and inside the Sheridan campuses. Our programs range all the way from the ideation stage, whether you're just curious about entrepreneurship, all the way to ventures that are growing on an exponential rate, generating thousands in revenue and preparing to scale to their large-scale businesses. We're hoping a couple outcomes to come out of these Mentor Monday session. We really want to make sure that you understand that we're here to support the community and the relevant learning opportunities that mentors can really provide each and every one of you. We're also going to use this as a wonderful opportunity for each of you to kind of engage and network with each other, maybe meet some new people and see where you guys can benefit one another. And it's also important for us that we're creating a really strong bond between us, Edge, and the community that we serve. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Diego Cortes, one of our mentors and residents at Sheridan Edge. Diego has had plenty of experience with entrepreneurship himself, running his own business. He's also assisting with many other small businesses as well, and has strong ties when it comes to digital marketing as a whole. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more as we move on. Our special guest today is Catherine Zhang, the Director for Budgets and Financial Planning at Sheridan College. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us today. Catherine has both a CPA and a CFA and is interested in entrepreneurship, financial planning, and budgeting for organizations. We also would love to take this opportunity to kind of discuss who's in the room. We can use this as a really cool opportunity to talk about yourself, talk about your business, and give you guys the opportunity to maybe do, let's say, about a 30-second elevator pitch. Talk to us about what you do, what your business idea is if you have one, and who you're trying to serve, and what you hope to gain from tonight. I will leave it up to anybody who would like to volunteer to be the first person to share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give the opportunity for somebody to give it a shot. I see a couple faces that are familiar in the room, and I may pick on you. Zara?
I don't mind starting. Okay, so just
do a couple minutes.
Hi, my name is Zara. I've been associated with Edge since I think it was exactly a year now, which is awesome. I work for a tech startup called Ecosystem Informatics Inc., which I'm looking at a subscription-based revenue model for giving people access to the data around pollution generated by the technology we have, which is a combination of hardware, software. And I'm also an EDGE member starting this year for Social Venture Circuit, for which I'm looking for more a knowledge sharing subscription-based revenue model. So very relevant session for me.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Perfect, awesome. All right, who would like to go next? Gonna pick on Katie, maybe.
Okay, I jumped in a little bit late, but we're just saying hi and why this session appealed to us and how long we've been associated with EDGE. Is that what we're saying?
Give us a 30-second elevator pitch on you, your business, and what you hope to gain from the session.
Okay, cool. So my name is Katie. I run a social enterprise and a not-for-profit that works with homeless youth. And I don't know much about subscription-based models, but we're looking to build our not-for-profit kind of donor base with like a monthly subscription. So that's why I'm here.
Very good.
Perfect, thank you, Katie. Favor, your camera's on. Would you like to give it a shot?
Sure. My name is Favor Nzeribe, and I am here to learn more about subscription basis. I know about maybe monthly recurring revenue from digital marketing, but I have an idea that I'm working on. It's a software and a hardware going forward for a pitch soon. So I think that having a subscription-based model into that would be really good. So I'm here to learn more about that.
Good for you.
Thank you, Favor. Maybe time for two more. I see Erica with her camera on, and Chris, who also put his camera on. Whichever
Sure,
one
I
wants
can
to
go.
go first.
So hi, my name is Erica. I work at EDGE as a digital marketing events coordinator. But I am running or starting up my own startup on the side. It's called Film Set Boot Camps, and it's like boot camps basically designed to get you into the film industry faster and more educated. So mine isn't really it's more of a pay per program, I guess, but I'm looking to see how I could maybe add a subscription to my business model.
Awesome, thank you, Erica. And Chris?
Hi, my name is Chris. I'm a high school teacher, and I'm working on an e-learning platform to help teachers collaborate with other teachers. Because right now, especially with COVID, it's pretty tough collaborating right now. So that's basically what I'm working on.
Awesome, Chris, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to give it a shot before we move on to the session? Okay, I think we'll call it. All right, wonderful, thank you. I'll give this opportunity, even though I did introduce each of the mentors we have joining us tonight, I'd like to give them each the chance to introduce themselves, maybe to a little bit more of a full length. So joining us today, we have Diego Cortes, mentor in residence at EDGE. I'll leave it to you, and then Catherine right after.
Awesome, thanks, Cole. And hi, everyone. It's great to see some friendly faces, and I hope you're all doing well and safe. And there's not much I'm going to say. I'm not the expert in the house today around subscription-based revenue models. But again, this is an introduction session where Catherine will share some of the basics, some of the one-on-one, if you will. There's obviously an opportunity for follow-ups. There's a lot more into subscription-based models that we can cover in an hour and a half, but we're hoping that this will serve as an opportunity for some thinking to spur out of this, and maybe some follow-ups with Catherine or myself, where we can address some of your individual business needs as far as subscription-based modeling. But I'm going to hand it over to Catherine to go ahead and share her presentation and kick us off. So again, Catherine, thank you for joining, as well as everyone else.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Diego and Cole, and thank you so much everybody for joining. So my name is Catherine Zhang. I am a CPA and a CFA, and that just means I do a lot of like accounting and financial management. I've also done like investment analysis, financial pro formas, and right now I'm a director for finance and budgets and financial planning at Sheridan College. So it's my home base, and I'm really passionate about, not only the business side, but also new ventures and technology and entrepreneurship. That's why I want to get involved in our community and kind of like see where I can add value to Edge in any way, shape, or form. I'll be very happy if anything I say today, like you'll find a little bit of, a little helpful at all, like that will just make me really happy. So like, I'm not really an expert on like marketing or subscription. I haven't really made a business that's a subscription-based business, but I have what I have is on the financial side, sort of understanding revenue and understanding the aspects of the revenue sustainability that's, that is just, that goes with the subscription model businesses and enterprises. I know a lot of you are not in sort of the entrepreneurship to make money per se. Like a lot of you are passionate about social enterprises and have a higher sort of purpose to better society. But that's very great. And what I want to maybe just hammer home a little bit today is just sort of give you a little bit of the financial acumen, some of the background knowledge for you to start thinking thinking of revenue and finances as a way to measure your business like the operational sustainability, and thinking of like operate from an operational lens, sort of how to use these financial metrics and concepts to help you, grow your business and grow your social enterprise and expand. So that's sort of my hope to achieve today. And also, if I'm not able to, you're welcome to answer me any questions at any time during the presentation. I want it to be more interactive. If I'm not able to answer something on the spot, I will, I promise to find out about it and get back to you. So I will have my email address at the end of this, the last slide. And then please also feel free to connect with me via email or LinkedIn or any other way. So that's kind of a little bit of my background. And if you guys are up to it, I can start sharing my slides.
Sounds great. Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, I'm just sharing now. Can you see it?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, so revenue for the subscription-based startups. And again, today we just want to introduce to some key concepts of the subscription-based revenue models for pre-seed or pre-revenue social impact startups. Oh, how do I go down? Okay. So first of all, like this is probably like really basic. What is revenue? And you may be from an accounting background, or maybe you're not from an accounting background, but that doesn't matter because it's really simple. Like if you look at, if you're thinking of yourself as a business owner for 1 second, so revenue is really the top line. And then there's a bunch of expenses that you incur, and then you would ultimately get to your bottom line, which is the profit or loss. So the top line revenue minus the cost of goods sold is your gross margin. And then there's another type of expense. Other expenses minus other expenses is your gross, then is your profit or loss. So there's a slight difference between the cost of goods sold and expenses. So just take a typical SaaS company as an example. Like some of the cost of goods sold are like customer support, account management, software licenses, website hosting, website development, subscription costs, and personnel training. Whereas your expenses are sort of an overhead that's not directly related to your offering of your service or product. So these expenses are kind of, for example, office expenses, rent, product development costs for things that are not in production yet. Anyhow, what I have in the red on the diagram on the right is all like money outflowing. So those are all expenses. Cost of goods sold or expenses, they're just expenses. And at the end of the day, revenue minus expenses will become your profit. Hopefully you have a profit left, and then you can use that profit to reinvest into your business, to make it, to grow, to expand it. So right now you already know that revenue is not the same as profit. Although I think sometimes people get them mixed up, because when they think, I'm going to generate, a $5 million revenue company. So that's very different from a $5 million profit company, right? Because you have to, subtract all the expenses to get to the profit. And also revenue is not the same as cash. And I think you might know that. Just to give you a very sort of easy example. So let's say if you have a subscription business where you have a user paying you an annual subscription fee of $120, like $10 per month, $120 for a whole year. But then in month one, your revenue is not $120 because only 1 month has passed and 11 months are sort of the, so your revenue is really only 1 month's worth of that, which is $10. So the rest of the money you get is actually called an unearned revenue. It's a liability rather than revenue, which is what you have earned. So then although your cash might be $120, your revenue in this case is only $10. Do you get that? Okay. And by the way, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to have your hand up. It's just I don't really know how to find if you have a hand up, so maybe Cole, you can tell me. If
Don't worry,
someone...
I'll keep an eye on the chat, and
Okay.
if anybody has any questions, I can keep an eye on that as well.
Perfect. So then I'll just keep going. In terms of then from this diagram, it's very obvious. How do you do well is either to increase your revenues or to reduce your expenses. And that's kind of, so hopefully you won't have a loss at the end of the day, or reduce your loss, or generate a bit of profit to, to reinvest into your business. That is, and yeah, okay. So the next slide is revenue for subscription model as an overview. So subscription model is very prevalent today. It's probably more than half of all the business out there. I think it's going to be around like 60% of all the businesses are going to be subscription based by like 2025. Like I read it somewhere. And a lot of the startups have elements of a subscription business model. And what are some of the characteristics of a subscription model is they all have a user base generated from online traffic, right? So they all have a way to have people sort of, go visit their website and then have a sales marketing channel to convert those traffic into, marketing qualified leads to leads, and then to essentially become a regular paying user base. And then from that user base, they will generate recurring revenue. So as Favor has mentioned, you might have some idea of the monthly recurring revenue. And so MRR is very, very important. It's probably one of the key, most important terminology that's sort of thrown around here. And monthly, so think about monthly recurring revenue. The more you have, and you see that the number is growing, that just means you have a healthy user base and that you have a sustainable business model. So the advantages for the subscription model is that it's very scalable. So once you have the user base and you have really figured out how to cater to those users, it can be scaled rather quickly at minimal cost. Also, the money just keeps flowing in terms of the monthly recurring revenue. They keep coming in. But on the other side, what's challenging to a lot of people is the initial infrastructure and also startup cost to acquire customers are high. So that is the customer acquisition cost. Think about that sales marketing channel where you convert online traffic eventually to a paid customer. There's a lot of, it's like a funnel, right? So there are many steps during that process, and it's costly. Also, so I guess like here, the key concept here is to maintain your customer base, reduce churn, and optimize your customer acquisition cost, such as, through generating new leads. And then that's sort of how you can have a sustainable subscription model and have a sustainable financial, finances for this model too. Let's dive into a little bit of the details. And I apologize in advance, like there's a lot of terminology here, but I guess some of the terminology is necessary, sort of, because it's sort of so prevalent in the industry. Everybody talks about these, they just refer to these terminologies. So bear with me a little bit here. ARPU is average revenue per user. It's very easy. It's just, I think about like on average, how much you are charging a customer per month. And the MRR, the monthly recurring revenue, and there's also the ARR, which is annual recurring revenue, but MRR is far more important than the ARR because things today are so quick in the internet age, right? So you're thinking really the business from month to month to month, not year to year to year. So a high MRR is very important. Churn is the customers leaving you, and it can be expressed as a percentage, which is the percentage of customers leaving you in a month, 10% or 8%, something like that. Expansion revenue, so that's additional revenue, not from enticing a new, acquiring a new customer, but from your existing customer, like your existing user base, through add-ons or upsales to them. And this can be advantageous because then you don't have to incur the initial cost to acquire a new customer. You already have the customer in your user base. Now you're just selling them an additional feature. CAC, which is a customer acquisition cost, and that is when you are converting like a stranger to a customer, and that can be a significant cost. Gross margin, as I have sort of previously shown you, is just revenue minus cost of goods sold, which is, you can think of it as revenue minus direct costs. So that is the kind of, but before, deducting your overhead costs. And that is the kind of the economic value that a customer is bringing you. And the gross margin on average for a very healthy subscription model business is around 80% or higher, because of the scalability. For these subscription models, like high gross margin, like 80% is achievable. LTV is lifetime value of a customer, which is a gross margin that a customer brings over the entire lifetime of the customer being in your user base. So think of it as, on average, how many months is the customer going to be in your user base before leaving you? So 5 months, a year, something like that. And then so what is all the money that you are getting from the customer over that period of time? Then that is the lifetime value of that customer. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there, Catherine, and just kind of shift back to some of the questions that are coming up in the chat box, which are awesome.
Sure.
One of them is, and one of them may not be very specific to like subscription-based revenue, but more around kind of consumer behavior, but also around discounts. But I'm curious to hear your personal experience, as you probably deal with some relevance with vendors. And discounts that vendors may offer, and maybe share your thoughts on, would you recommend offering a discounted price if someone is, for example, paying annually versus monthly? For example, if someone wants to buy your services or your SaaS-based solution, should you give them $100 monthly if they pay for the whole year, rather than charge them, $120 every month for them to pay every month? So what's your take on offering discounts?
I think that's like, I see that all the time. Like, for example, like I would say yes, like because um like if that's the sort of the customer, if that's what they're looking for and you're able to grow your user base that way, go for it. For example, like I personally signed up for an app called Master Class, right? Like it's actually an annual subscription. Or sorry, let's say like there's many things like Coursera, for example, they have annual subscriptions, and then they also have the sort of the per course per month subscriptions. And then what I find is I usually see that there is the annual subscriptions do give you a little bit of a discount because you're paying so much more money upfront. That is and that is, you know, that is providing a value to the customer, right? Like they are looking for a lower price by choosing the annual model. So then so that's and if that's the only way to sort of get the customer, then you know that's what you would have to do. And maybe like without doing that, like you only have this many users, but then when you open up the sort of the annual option as well, then you will expand your user base. You see that, like,
Yeah.
so that's actually beneficial to your business.
I want to follow up as well, because I feel like this ties into the next question around, and this will probably require some research around what's the rate of renewal or the rate of churn based off of you know, discounts. But one of the things that I'm thinking is, how much should entrepreneurs be mindful of their customer acquisition costs before deciding to actually offer a discount?
Yes, that's very important because they need to understand how much it would take them, it would cost them to acquire a new customer. I mean, they just need to know that for their own benefit, not just for deciding whether it, you know, to offer monthly or the annual option, but just to understand their CAC, the customer acquisition cost, which I will show you on a further slide. There are some financial metrics to measure how healthy your business is from a financial perspective. There are a few ratios that tie that in. So like I did a bit of research. Some of like a healthy churn is somewhere between maybe below 10%, maybe something like 8 or 7%. But I mean, it depends on the industry, right? Some industry where there's a lot of competition and very similar product offerings, you might see the churn is very high because like everybody's offering similar services, and then you just acquire your customers, and then your customers snatch them away, and then the next month maybe you will win some customers over your competitors, and so on and so forth. So it really depends on which industry you are in and how saturated that industry is and how many sort of competitors you're facing in terms of the churn. Yeah, so and then in terms of the customer acquisition cost, I'll leave that to a later slide. Any other questions?
I don't have anything here popping up on the chat box. However, maybe I think it'll help when you go through your next slide, which I believe looks like you may be going through an example. That may open up some new questions.
Yeah, for sure. So here I have an example, and on the diagram on the left, you'll see it's a leaky bucket, and that's what usually people are faced with. So your existing customers is the water in the bucket, and then the new customers coming in is the water coming out of the tap into the bucket, and then but there are holes in the bucket, and the water leaking out is the lost customers due to churn. And this is as an example here, like on the right, I have a small numerical example with a waterfall diagram. So the beginning MRR, beginning monthly recurring revenue, let's say is $1,000, which is you have existingly, 100 customers at $10 per person per month. So 100 times 10 is 1,000 to begin with. And then you are adding 20 new customers in the month. And so that is bringing you $200. And then the existing customer base is like they're upgrading the model to adding like $4 per person, and 25 of your existing users do that upgrade. That's an expansion. So that gives you $100. And then let's say the downgrades are $50. And unfortunately, in the month you lost 10 customers, which is $100 lost. Your ending MRR is, when you start from the 1,000 MRR in the beginning and then, add and subtract all the items in between, your ending MRR will be $1,150. So just to sort of wake you up a little bit, like, do you know what, there's a bonus question here. What is the beginning and ending ARPU? I wonder if anybody is able to calculate quickly.
Catherine, I just want to make sure ARPU, it's annual revenue per user, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
that's
so
right.
type that in the chat and then maybe someone will jump in to answer that.
Okay, is there a way for me to see the chat?
If you go up to the top, you should see the little bar that comes down. If you go to the right side of that bar, there should
Oh,
be a
yes,
drop
okay,
down
I see
to
now.
see the chat.
Great. See if there's anything. Oh, so Favor, you have that's a very good start. So $10, that's right. That's the beginning ARPU, because you have 1,000. You have 100 customers at $10, like average $10 per person per month. So $10 is the beginning ARPU. What about the ending ARPU? Does anyone want to challenge themselves?
I
I'll
have
give
a
you
question.
another. Sorry, yet?
Yeah, are we adding, for example, the upgrades and the downgrades and every single thing there to get the ending our MRR?
Yeah, that's right. So the ending MRR is after you take in all the consideration of the, the downgrades, upgrades. But then the ARPU is a little different. So ARPU is actually, so the average revenue per user, which is, so now you will need to look at your user base. So the beginning user base was 100 customers, but at the end of the month, let's see how many customers you have now. So 100, you acquired 20 new, so plus 20. And then the upgrades doesn't mean there's no additional customer. That's all your existing customers. Yes, Ming, you got it right. So exactly. So that's your ARPU. So that's your ending ARPU is the ending MRR divided by the ending user base. So ending MRR is the $1,150, and then the ending user base is 100 plus the 20 new customers minus the 10 customers being churned away, which is 110 customers. So 1150 divided by 110 is $10.45. So your ARPU actually increased a little bit from the beginning to the end of the month.
Now, quick question. What would be the benefit of understanding your average revenue per user?
Good question. It's important because you want to sort of set that as a benchmark, right? Like over time for your own operations, how are you doing? Is your ARPU growing? Is your ARPU declining? Because ARPU is you kind of need to, and also how do you compare with your competitors? How do you compare in industry? Is it normal? Are you charging enough? Are you like having that's kind of the benefits is really a lot of these financial metrics is for you to compare with yourself and also with others. And there are a lot of, there are a few more financial metrics that I want to jump in after this slide. Any other questions so far? Okay, let's go to the next one. Sorry, yeah?
I was just saying, I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
I'll
So,
make a
here,
comment. If it's okay, I'll make a quick comment, and I want to connect this to the importance, which is you're probably going to talk about it. But one of the things that I think is so key is if, let's say, we run with this example where an entrepreneur has calculated their ARPU, I think tying that back into the discount component is that you want to make sure that you have an understanding of that number, that $10.45, so that then you could use that to then see how much of a discount you'd be willing to give to your customer, so that you kind of create more value rather than kind of in some ways hurt yourself by offering discounts, and maybe you're not even breaking even, or you're not able to make profit. So just wanted to throw that in there as a point there.
Very good point, for sure. Like our pool will help you with pricing. So like your average revenue per user is a very good gauge for you to determine what kind of pricing strategy you want, and what that does to your bottom line essentially. Like for example, if you want to go with like a free trial, okay, instead of charging that person $10 per month, you're gonna have zero revenue on that person for a couple months. And then so that's sort of, you're losing, if it takes 2 months for the person to do the free trial to become a regular user, you're losing $20. But also how much more you are bringing when they once convert into your regular paying customer. So like you can sort of, this is the basic number, MRR, and the ARPU, and then you can sort of play with it to see what different pricing strategies will do to your profit or loss. There's a few additional metrics, and these I just want to sort of, they're a little bit complicated, but I want you to maybe be aware that these do exist and they do make sense. Like just sort of bear with me a little bit. I'll walk you through the logic here. So as I was mentioning, like the CAC payback, so this metric is quite important as a way. It's like a customer acquisition cost payback. It's almost like a break-even analysis on the investment you invest in acquiring a new customer. And that's essentially how many months can we return the investment made on acquiring a new customer. So for example, let's assume the cost for acquiring a new customer is $20, just continuing with the previous example. And then the average gross margin, gross margin is revenue minus cost of goods sold. The revenue per person was $10 in the previous example. And then let's say the cost of goods sold was around $2. And then you have an average gross margin of $8. Then it takes about 2.5 months for you to break even on that customer. Like, so before the 2.5 months is up, you are still kind of, out in the red a little bit on that customer. But after 2.5 months have passed, the customer is still with you, then you're actually generating profit on them. That's the way to look at it. That's the customer acquisition cost payback. So obviously tying that back into your discount question, if you are offering a discount, then that would make your revenue lower on the customer, and your gross margin would be lower too, right? Because gross margin is revenue minus the direct costs or cost of goods sold. And then so now you have a lower average, you have a lower gross margin on that customer. And then your customer acquisition cost is however amount, and then that divided by your gross margin will become, it takes longer for you to break even essentially. So I guess like before you decide to offer any discounts, sort of do a quick simple calculation like that to understand what it means on the bottom line. How much, maybe instead of 2.5 months to realize the break even on that customer, now it takes 4 months to do that. So that's sort of how this plays into that pricing strategy.
I've got a question here in the chat,
Yeah.
and you probably saw that from Katie. And
a follow-up question.
yeah, and this is a really good one as well, because I think and I went through this myself when I was thinking about my pricing for my agency. I oftentimes thought about how do I best keep it simple, but at the same time like offer value. And the question is, do you recommend keeping it simple for your financial planning at the beginning, and only having one tier for your subscription?
So there's a few things that you need to consider when you're talking about a pricing model. Yeah, there are many different pricing models out there. So the flat pricing is one of them, and that is the pro of that is that it's very simple to understand and it's simple to charge, right? Like everybody has it's just one tier. But the drawback of that is that you're not extracting enough value from different customers. Right? Different people may be willing to, pay more for a higher level of service or less for a lower level of service. And then obviously the tiered model is the opposite, right? So it's more complex. So it has the potential to be confusing. But then it does leave less money on the table. Like you're capturing different types of customers. So you really have to see, like, to understand your customers a little bit, and maybe look at the industry that you are in as well. Like in your industry, what are other people doing, and what is the general the price that's being charged. And also what kind of industry, like is the market saturated with a lot of competitors, or it's a niche market where you can charge a higher price for your product and still be confident that people will be paying into you. I would say that for it is beneficial to keep it simple for at the beginning. And then as you expand your offerings, maybe in the future you will have maybe now you only have one tier of service. And in the future, if you expand your offering, it becomes natural for you to have maybe a second or third tier. So just be mindful that you could be, leaving some money on the table in the beginning. But if that's kind of easy for you to get your foot in the door by tapping into some of the initial users, then by all means.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Thank you for providing that perspective.
You're welcome. Okay, shall we go on? Thank you, Katie. You're welcome, actually. So the lifetime value, I just wanted to show you a quick example of how that is an important ratio to understand as well. Is I kind of mentioned it in concept what lifetime value is, right? It's the total financial sort of benefit that one customer is bringing to you over the lifetime of the customer being in your user base. But what does that really mean? So it's essentially kind of a gross margin per customer per month times implied lifetime in months. So you first need to figure out how many months on average the customer will stay in your user base. And that is a very it's a splendid simple equation, which is 1 divided by churn. So in the previous example, we had like 10% per month churn rate. So 10 people out of 100 customers went away in that example. So that churn was 10%. And so then the implied customer lifetime is 1 divided by 10%, which is 10 months. So that means on average, about a customer will stay in your user base for 10 months on average. Maybe some are less, some are more, but on average 10 months. Then in this case, the that's very powerful. That means, and each one of them, on average brings you $8 in gross margin per month. That times 10 months is $80. So then your customer lifetime value in this case is $80. And why is that important? There's another ratio. So the lifetime value divided by customer acquisition cost ratio is essentially looking at, so how many times, how effective you are at generating revenue, in comparison to the cost it takes for you to acquire a customer. And usually the ratio obviously is the higher the better. So the higher, it just means that, if you have some way to keep your cost of customer acquisition low, but in the meantime, like they stay with you for a long time, and then you have a very high LTV, lifetime value, then that just means your business is very, very, is going to be pretty successful. The higher the better. So this ratio, for example, if it's greater than 3, it's pretty good. So in this example that we were just going through, the LTV, the lifetime value was $80 per average customer, and then the customer acquisition cost was I said like $20. So this ratio was 4. So then in this case, it's greater than 3. It's a pretty healthy business. It's probably a very successful one. So that's just a little bit on the additional metrics. And I mean, it can be a little bit too much for one sitting, but I just want to make you aware that there are these metrics available out there, and use them to your advantage. Because this leads to the next slide. Why is all of this important? So on the operations side, you can use these financial metrics and ratios as health indicators for your enterprise, right? Like, so you can, for example, measure your ARPU every month and see whether it's going up, going down, and if it's going up, that's great. You can understand maybe it's because you have done a lot of add-ons this month, and that's really great. And you can do something like that again. If your churn is going up, okay, maybe you need to look into the competition a little bit more, or try to understand why people are leaving you. And your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, that's very important, because it doesn't matter how much money you bring in, but it really, it's more important to know how much money you actually get to sort of, retain after you take out all the costs. And then the CAC is a very big cost. So by sort of keeping an eye on all those ratios and metrics from month to month to month, you have your pulse on the health of your enterprise. You'll know, sort of, you just need to understand what's, you just look at these ratios and you can have a picture of what's really happening. Are people leaving you? Is the cost suddenly going up? What's happening in the marketplace as well. So that's like, use these financial metrics as indicators for your operational sustainability.
Catherine, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe shift back to the importance of CAC, and what would you say were some of the best practices to calculate the CAC? And I know that every business will probably have different costs, and it's just kind of difficult to have a one set answer. But in conceptually, what are some best practices to calculate CAC and allocate it to a per user?
So CAC is a little bit different. Like, if you look at the overall expenses, there's the cost of goods sold and expenses. So CAC is a little different from these, right? Like, so if you think about CAC, think of like sales, the marketing channel. So it's a funnel too, marketing funnel. Like, it's essentially the cost you are paying to acquire a new customer. So that's not related to your overhead, or it's not related to your web development and stuff. It's kind of like Google AdWords, the money you pay to have those services. And there's many steps during the marketing marketing funnel. I'm not an expert on the marketing side, but I am aware. So for example, first you need to convert your visitors into sign up stage, and then they have the marketing qualified leads. Maybe only like 20% of them go to that stage, and then they will be converted into the sales qualified leads, where you can directly do some direct pitching to them. Maybe only 20% of them go that stage, and then maybe some people will sign up for trials, and after a couple months they will become your regular paying customer. So it's the cost generated in all of these steps. That's what CAC is.
Okay, so it sounds more like which sounds like a follow-up session of some sort, or something along the lines around best ways to calculate CAC from a marketing standpoint. Because for me personally, I had a challenge with this, and I didn't understand it at first, but I've been learning a lot about how to allocate these costs accordingly. And part of I think maybe more of a selfish question is how to best allocate that to a user. And by you saying it confirms that CAC is most likely going to be allocated to a marketing spend, to a marketing budget.
Right.
And there's other costs of goods sold that don't play a part in that, like your overhead and other.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. So that is different. So the like customer support, for example, that's not to do with acquisition, like acquiring a new customer, right? Like so a lot of the cost of goods sold is more sort of a general operating expenses, just to do with your existing day-to-day operations on supporting your existing users. So a lot of that is that. So the customer support, account management, software licenses, website development, web hosting, those things. A lot of those, that's kind of your cost of goods sold. But the CAC is more specific to do with acquiring a new customer. It's probably a one-time cost. Like if you're thinking about like for this one customer, you only acquire him or her once. Unless the person turns away and then you have to win them back, obviously. But it's not a recurring cost a lot of times.
Gotcha. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate that.
And just sort of back into why all of this is important. So another thing is you can use the financial metrics and ratios also as targets that you're trying to achieve over time, right? So sometimes what we see is like you probably your traditional accounting bookkeeping software that just logs all your credits and debits and maybe generates like an income statement at the end of the month or something like that. But we also like a lot of people also do is a dashboard in terms of tracking all the ratios and metrics, churn or CAC or the ratios that were in the previous slides, and tracking how they do over time, and also establishing some targets over time that's something that you want to achieve. And so that's the like accounting is kind of like two functions. One is looking at the past and understanding what happened, and also is establishing some goals for the future, or trying to do some financial forecasting of trying to forecast where you will be 1 year from today, or 2 years, 3 years from today. Like where should your ratios be? Where should your sales or your volume or your user base be? So a lot of so it's looking back and also looking forward as well. And also like a final word on that is that it also helps lower your operational risk and the investment risk for the investor. Like if your venture will one day become at the stage where you're looking for investors to invest in your venture, they look at revenue a lot. They look at a lot of these metrics to value a company. And for example, they look for high MRR, low churn. They look at some of the metrics and see how things evolve over time. And also the fact that you are using metrics to control your financial, to do your financial planning and to analyze your performance, your financial performances. Like it lowers their investment risk, right? Compared to someone that has never learned about these ratios or doesn't keep track of them, doesn't really have a clue on how how these important aspects of their business are changing. Like the investor would favor someone that has a more solid sort of grasp on the financial management side and understanding the operating metrics. And that will eventually play into the valuation. Like if you're at a stage where your valuation becomes relevant, if you obviously want a higher valuation as possible, almost pretty much all the time, like investors will value a small business, which is anything that's with revenue less than $5 million per year. They look at it as a multiple of revenue minus expenses. Whereas for larger businesses, they look at EBITDA, which is totally different. So for smaller businesses, startups, revenue is especially important. And so are all the metrics as well. So that's kind of what I have in the slide materials. If you have any questions, let me know. You can, either now, or if you want to connect with me, you can email me or connect over LinkedIn. And yeah, I'll open up the floor to any additional questions you might have.
Awesome. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Catherine.
Cool. I'll jump in.
Pardon?
I just wanted to jump in real quick, and I know there were some questions that you're probably going to go into this call, and so I apologize if I'm interrupting your flow there, but there were some questions there, questions that were submitted to us through registration,
okay.
The registration for the session today, and some of them are a bit out of scope. They involve marketing mostly, and but I'm trying to maybe, if there's anyone that asks the questions, if they were willing to jump in to share a little bit more context around the question, and maybe they do tie into subscription-based models. So if anyone that's here that submitted questions, if you want to jump in and provide some context, maybe Catherine and I and Cole as well can maybe support.
As well, Catherine, if you want to pull down your slides so everybody has a chance to see each other, I think that'd be a perfect opportunity.
How do I, sorry, do I need
Just
to
go up to the top and click stop sharing.
stop sharing? Okay.
Perfect.
Oh, now I can see your faces.
Exactly.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, when you're starting out as a startup and you want to have subscribers, the problem is, determining how much to, charge them. And you were talking about, once you have followers, well, it's hard to get followers, right? If you start charging them right from the get-go. So we were talking about having a free, for 2 months or whatnot. But I was just wondering how you determine like the appropriate cost. Do you just look at your competitors? Is that basically how you do that?
So there is a few ways you do it, like in industry, like where people try to do pricing for a SaaS business, and it's an art. Like it's not that simple, and you probably need to spend a lot of time on it, and probably need to revise it and have a plan, a strategy, a pricing strategy that is sustainable. Like if you actually like start your like really high, really low, like it might be harder to actually price up in the future, for example. But a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to pricing, and I just think that that's actually pretty important to dedicate more time. So for example, some thoughts on pricing. So there's a few things. One way to understand, determine your price is look at the cost. I think that's probably okay. Granted that your costs are not extremely high, like if it's like a really well-run, efficient system, your cost, which is maybe like your operating cost for the business. Like it needs to maybe at least cover that cost. So that's probably the lower of the range. And also there's other people look at the market. So like if the market is one where there's a lot of competitors and it's pretty mature and it's saturated, then you probably have a pretty good idea of how much you can charge, how much people are willing to pay. Like they're not willing to pay much more than, what everybody else charges if it's like there's a lot of competition. Whereas if you're in a niche market and there isn't a lot of people competing with you, or there is a very, or you are offering something completely different, and you know that your customers, you're hitting a pain point, like you're solving a real pain point that nobody else is doing, then I think you have more flexibility in terms of pricing and charging a higher price, and be confident that people will come to you. So that's kind of like then that goes along with like looking at your offering, your service, or your product. Is it really, the thing about the subscription model is that it kind of requires you to be continuously generating value, right? Like it's not a once and for all sale of a product and then you're like the customer is gone. Like you need a way to have them come to you every month or be happy to pay you every month. And so like there, you need to think of a way to make your, if you currently have a product, maybe think of like converting that product into a service instead, something that you can keep charging every month. And then you are generating value for the customer continuously. So I think those are things that you need to figure out in terms of securing a big and sustainable user base. Yeah, and I know, like as a startup, the freemium model is quite prevalent as well, right? Like in places where there's a lot of competition, maybe the only way for you to stand out is by offering a freemium, and then with the potential for them to convert into fee-paying customers. Yeah, I would say like, yeah.
Just wanted to jump in there too. It also depends on which market you're trying to address, Chris, and
Right.
I think too there's the aspect of the freemium model tends to work a lot more when you're doing a B2C, when you're
Mhm.
offering your platform to the end user itself, whereas for an enterprise model, you definitely don't want to go
Oh,
freemium
no.
because there's
Yeah.
too many costs involved. There's too much scale involved. Also, depending on how many, and in case in your scenario, Chris, you're probably dealing with a large amount of users being students. So I think it's really a matter of like how and this is obviously this is a marketing aspect to it. There's a marketing and a sales aspect to it. Is how can you open up some doors, or how can you leverage network to open up some doors to get some introductory conversations, but have a clarity around what that pricing looks like. And to give you a scenario, when I worked with the LinkMentalHealth team, at the beginning, we were approaching the therapists themselves, and they were our end user in the sense of they were looking to be able to attract more individuals booking therapy sessions, and we were charging them. We were doing a freemium model where we would want them to try the platform and then try to turn them over. However, the model flipped to building something for the enterprise, for the big companies, and there was a price that was set at that point, and there was a price that was negotiable. And what we did was we just went with it, and we looked at obviously what externally what we could find. It's kind of difficult to find for B2B products, difficult to find a specific costs that they have to they have to take on. But we would just assume a lot of it is running on some assumptions, and then we would set this pricing. And the moment we get an opportunity to get into those conversations with like the mental health officers at an organization, or someone that's dealing with the HR director of some sort. We'd pitch with that pricing, and then figure out once we went through the point where they were interested, we'll figure out how to best give them a price that would make sense for us to make some money, but also to cover our costs, but also make some money. So again, it's kind of an art, and there's not one straightforward answer for that.
Right. And I also wonder, like, if it's like, do people maybe can they maybe run a survey if like, or a test, like a focus group, see how much people are willing to pay for a service like the one you're offering? Maybe that could be an idea, like a maybe free trial period, or even like early access for a small group of people to test out, and then expand only if it's successful. So there are, I guess it's probably a trial. I mean, trial and error in a way. Like, you probably have to keep at it for a while to really figure out hit the sweet spot.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, no, it's definitely difficult in that, you want to get as much revenue as possible, and you want to see if a subscription model will actually work, but you also need to try to entice people to actually come to your site and actually pay for it, right? And so, I have looked at the freemium model, and I am considering that because I don't want to charge the teachers too much, for example, and students. So I'm kind of looking at doing freemium for like at least the first 6 months, for example, and then going to a subscription model where it's more B2B, where you go after the school boards or specific schools,
Yeah.
right? But I think one of the hardest things as a startup, I'm sure everybody's found this as well, is just the funding. They want to see if you can get subscriptions and if you can generate income. And I think that's one of the hardest things for a startup, right? Just to show that revenue.
Right, for sure. Like, that's sometimes you don't even have revenue, and like at that point, like, if you want like investors, like, they would have very limited in terms of financial to analyze in like pre-revenue stage. So that's the challenge, I guess. But then, like, if you don't have revenue, then show that you have user base, or that you have the potential to generate revenue. And I definitely agree with you. Like, so I guess now you're just approaching the teacher sort of like one by one, but then like eventually you want to target the school boards, right?
Yeah,
That
eventually.
would be the way to go.
Yeah, so I'd start with freemium with I guess students and parents and teachers, but eventually, once that's been proven, as far as getting users, then I would go B2B, go right to the school boards or to specific schools.
Absolutely. Yeah. It reminds me of a startup, like, it's no longer a startup, but it's called a Prodigy Games. It was actually like in the Halton region, like a few years ago. It was a startup at that point, and what they do is they do math games for elementary school students. So I think they started off probably doing something similar, where they had to target, like, they had to find a school that would be willing to use their software. It's like a game, and then you have the kids play the game, and they somehow learn math at the same time. And then they wrote a couple white papers after the initial test cases were very positive. Like, they saw, like, after participating in this game, like, students' math scores went up like 20% or something like that, right? And then so you would have that, you have something like that, and you go to the school board, and then now I think they're very like prevalent in a lot of the classrooms.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Catherine. It was a good connection between the conversation that we're having here with Chris and one question I want to get your thoughts on, and also maybe encourage everyone to jump in as well, if you have follow-ups. But how do we know that a service can be a subscription-based model? And maybe I can jump in kind of share some thoughts around that. I'll use an example there recently did through a financial model that I was working with someone on building, and it was a subscription box on like toothpaste and other things that they you use after a period of time, and they were building a sustainable kind of box of goods. And the reason behind doing that is because, well, one, toothpaste, we use it, but as well as soaps and other kind of hygiene products, if you will. And so that business itself, when you look at the pieces of it, so the soap and the toothpaste, for example, you wouldn't be able to build a subscription-based model around it if you could, but you could people could go and buy them in the stores, right? So what this person did was they kind of put together this box, and they branded it really nice. They put together like a, they put together a little sample, and when I was looking at it, I was like, looks really nice. Like this, you could start to sell this, if you were to figure out a way to actually, every month be able to deliver the box. And so the first thing we were working was building that financial model. So the I mean, there's not a one answer, but it's your service. Can you actively deliver value on a month to month, and kind of choose those? If you're looking at like a simple one tier pricing model, what are the benefits, the value that is in that tier? And if you're starting with one, then you could bundle that up and then sell it on a monthly basis for someone. And that would be a good start. So there's obviously various examples here in the room, from my understanding of some of the folks are here, but in conceptually thinking through how to best put those service offerings, whether, let's say, it's a membership site, what is included in it? Is it a Slack community? Is it access to specific people that they wouldn't have access to? Or if it's something else, like what are those pieces? And I think the rest is really your understanding around the market and running on some fair assumptions around, okay, let's try if people will be willing to pay for this, and you'll test the market that way, and you'll see if there's traction through some of your marketing activities, which digital marketing, there's you're doing content marketing, you're doing you're doing paid ads. But I think in general, I feel like most businesses can be bundled up, and you can actively charge for them, especially now with the pandemic. We're being forced to figure out how to best do that. I mean, looking at restaurants, for example, how they're building like kits and they're selling them, curbside pickup kits, or they're delivering them. So I think it's doable. It just requires you to kind of think, well, what are the things that I can offer in a bundle way that people will be willing to pay for every month or every quarter, or whatever frequency you like to charge that individual. But also, is there value in there, and what's your cost? So are you actually breaking even and making profit?
Absolutely. Just add on to Diego's example. So I think in that case, the what you are doing is you're turning a product into a service, right? Instead of selling toothpaste, you're now converting that into a monthly recurring service where maybe the person is not really just going after the toothpaste, but it's that surprise factor or that experience of getting a box every month. There's a few other examples that, cosmetics. I have seen a few, like every month they give you a box. They send you a box worth like maybe $30 or something of cosmetics for you to try different things, and to post on Instagram. And then also now grocery too, like a lot of the HelloFresh or something similar to that. Like they just, it's actually providing a real benefit in the pandemic. Not many people want to. So for people that don't want to go out and shop groceries, they get this box every week or every day. So so a lot of, if anything at all, like this pandemic is really actually forcing us to do a lot of, or it's encouraging subscription-based model business to flourish, actually.
Content too. Content is becoming something that you can make it a commodity or feel like. I see like, for example, most recently I bought a subscription to a publication around social impact, and the one thing that got me was how creative they were with their content, and they were able to flip their content and make it me feel like I was part of a community, which they did through Slack, and they gave me specific access to a Slack community, which I can kind of contribute to, and I can meet others. They also had like exclusive content that was sent to me from their editor in chief, which was also pretty cool to be able to kind of see the thinking around an editor in chief of a social impact or publication. And these are value adds that maybe they had thought about prior to pandemic, or maybe they just realized, hey, we need to figure out how to take content and like partition it into service offerings that we could charge for. And so I ended up buying the annual thing just because I got a trial run for 15 days, and then they turned me over with the amount of things that I got the chance to play around with. And then I was like, okay, this is something that fits my needs. So not sure if that's gonna sort of serve as a nugget of thinking for those of you who are actively thinking about how do I leverage the content that I'm putting out, or the content that I'm creating. But I think overall you're looking to create an experience for your customer, because no longer, like, the days are over where you can sell a product unless it's a very trendy and like popular product that people will just really come back. I think people are looking for an experience to tie along to, or a meaningful reason for them to join join you in your march towards social good and actually buy your product as well, especially the folks here who are building a social impact organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, like, for example, Zara, your startup is on data polluted generated by technology. So so that's like
With it is that the customer acquisition cost is high, or the upfront cost is high, because we take the responsibility for deploying the system and the customers just take the information. So the break-even point comes, I think, at about 5-6 months. So we want to make sure that we're not, we don't want to do month to month. We want to put long-term contracts in place for it to be worthwhile. And I think, just given the nature of, let's say, pollution analysis, they probably won't get enough out of it within 1 month to kind of keep rolling. So I think that the churn rate over the month to month would be maybe too high.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just curious, like, they churn to go to a competitor, or do they just fall out of
I think that not to go to a competitor, but to just kind of pursue the project at all. It's, in some ways, when you're monitoring the environment, unfortunately, it's a nice to have part of the budget for them to spend on, and not it's absolutely necessary for us to measure this. It's not like that for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, oh, this is just not the way we want to pursue it. And there's not direct competition, but there's other ways for them to go about, I guess, conducting similar projects around environmental monitoring, and not based on the data itself.
So are these, I guess, your customers, they are the companies that are interested in learning about the pollution that they themselves generate, and they buy into your service?
For private industries, yes, that would be the case. For cities or people that are responsible or answer to certain communities, they would want to monitor those areas that they have to be responsible for. So, for example, they're doing it for their entire area.
So that would be the region or the municipality where they have a goal to reduce pollution.
Sometimes I have days where I think that maybe subscription-based revenue model, is that the way to go or not as well, just because the customer acquisition cost is so high, rather than to say, here's your project cost, here's what you have to pay for. Not sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I went through that, and obviously this is a completely different business, but I went through that, like, and I ended up actually going through it's just value-based pricing, which is not calculated on like the hours that go into the job, but more around like more around like the deliverables that are going to be taking place, and so I started using that. But I try to explore subscription-based modeling, but for a digital marketing agency at the time, I guess it was just too much to wrap my head around. So I decided to kind of go with that one. But I feel like if I would have kind of gotten a better grasp of subscription-based revenue modeling, I think I would have been a little bit more scalable, because I had to outsource a lot. So, but anyways, it is something to like really consider. And sales cycles are such a big thing, especially with what you're doing, Zara, because like you said, to capture data, someone that wants to gather insights from that data over 1 month period, it just isn't enough.
Right.
I guess the interesting example to study with subscription-based models is cell phone companies, where nobody wants to pay for that phone upfront, but it's easier for you to say, okay, I'll pay $100 over 24 months rather than saying I'll pay $1,000 for this today. It feels a little bit easier. It's just a matter of packaging how we perceive it, but I don't know if we like the phone company example or not.
Exactly. The phone company is a classic example of
we don't.
I know, it's so true. It's like we don't think about it, but it's like, yeah, that's like a subscription model that we have to pay.
We're all subscribed to it.
Lock you in for like 24 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, Catherine. I was just gonna do a time check, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just adding a comment. And by the way, all the phone companies in Canada is an oligopoly. That means they have absolute like pricing power. So we don't have much say about the prices there.
We don't. All right. Well, we have about three minutes before today's session is. Again, I hope this introductory session kind of spurs some thought, and maybe there's some follow-up questions. And feel free to reach out to me, whether I'm able to help you or maybe point you to Catherine to do a little bit of a deeper dive. We certainly want to be able to help you think through whether you do choose to go with a subscription-based revenue model or something else. And so if neither myself or Catherine have the knowledge, I will make sure that I will find someone that we could kind of point you to. But this was super helpful. I hope that it was super. I mean, it was super helpful for me just to understand a bit more about what subscription model looks like as an entrepreneur. And so definitely thank you, Catherine, for coming in here and making time Monday evening to hang out with us. I certainly hope that you found value out of this, and I hope that everyone else found value out of it. But before we wrap up, about 2 minutes left. Any other parting thoughts? Last questions?
I would like to have a copy of the slides just to work through them, because there's a lot of content in them to go through and apply. So that would be really
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
Thank you for delivering that. It was amazing.
You're
Awesome.
welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we get those slides out and in the thank you email that we send out for everyone else, and this will also be uploaded to our Mentor Mondays like playlist that we have on YouTube as well for anyone that wants to rewatch it.
And if you've missed any of the Mentor Mondays coming up so far, feel free to watch any of them that are there as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and I really enjoyed this session. And hopefully, you have learned a little bit, from here. And I'm really looking forward to participating and to getting to know you a bit more over the future as well. So all the best luck on your ventures, and connect with me anytime.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good
everyone. Bye,
night.
Laura. Bye, Chris.
Thank you.